Well, I did like this episode of The Bridge a little better. I mean, there were still problems with it, but overall, it actually represented the point where we can really start to gain some traction. The story this time was, in my opinion, better told. I think the issue last time, and the reason I didn't really enjoy last last week's episode as much, is because not only were they trying to introduce new characters, but they also had the burden of basically reintroducing us to all the plot lines from last year, not all of which I remembered. True, some of that may have been my fault because there were there were a lot of plot lines from last year, not just the one involving David Tate. But in good writing, I think some of that should be. I think the show should be accountable for some of that. However, we're not talking about that. We're talking about this episode. We really got to. This episode really had a common theme, which was the eventual arrest of Fausto Galvan, who is who's the short little cartel boss with the cap. And yeah, the acting I actually thought was still pretty much on par with last time, meaning very good. Diane Kruger and Demian Bashir are still very good, although I was a little disappointed that they didn't really get more scenes together. Ted Levine actually got more time to shine this time around. Um, a certain part of me, and I think a certain part of a lot of people, not just including Craig Ferguson, can't really let go of the Buffalo Bill persona with Ted Levine. But that doesn't really take away from the fact that he's still a good actor and he still does a good job with this role. Um, let's see who else. Matthew Lillard and Adriana are still very good. They still work very well off of each other. I actually when the show first started out and Matthew Lillard was apparently spared from the car bomb, I just thought this was going to be a one-off character, and I couldn't really imagine having to deal with this guy for an entire show. However, he's really gone through a very visible arc, and honestly, become one of the more interesting characters on the show. I mean, Matthew Lillard, yeah, he's played some annoying characters, but I still like him as an actor. I think a lot of it has to do with the way that his characters are written. And his character on this one, yeah, he can be a little goofy at times, but he really seems to want to improve himself. So Matthew Lillard does play that part well. And we also got a little bit more clarity when it came to the mysterious woman who came into town with her Mexican bodyguard, and how she is and why she has come to town. Blah blah blah. We learned that Fausto Galvan wants her for some reason before the Americans do, and he is installing uh, Marco into the case of the Americans in order to accomplish this. So that ought to set up some interesting drama later on. However, one recurring issue with this show, aside from the occasionally convoluted storyline, there at some points there seem to be a little too many things going on at once. The recurring problem with this show, the biggest one in my opinion, is that the pacing it moves at a snail's pace. The pacing in this is just glacial. And that was a problem with Season 1 that they did not fix in Season 2, or at least they have not fixed so far. Despite how interesting the characters are, despite how well or not well they handle the storylines, the pacing is just not I think it comes down to that fine line where okay, we're going to make this more realistic show, um, this more methodical approach to police work, especially especially border to border police work, which which has the potential to go even slower because again you have to deal with extraditing and seeing which department gets which case, whose jurisdiction it falls under, so that has the potential to be even slower. Um, so I think it comes down to that fine line of how true to real life do you make these cases versus how fast do you make it to where it's still entertaining to watch? Because if they made this true to life, period, I think it would be a very very boring show. I'm not saying that police have boring lives, but again, I'm trying to think of the words to describe this. If you made this very true to life, very very methodical, like quote unquote real, then I think the pacing would be even slower. And I think they are taking certain liberties. Um, for instance, I don't I for instance, as far as I know, it takes a long time to get fingerprint analysis, DNA testing, so on and so forth. So you occasionally see them. Actually, no. A lot of the time, you see police procedurals take shortcuts in regards to those. However, this show this show really seems determined to stick to its premise of, oh, we are going to show a very authentic account of cross border police work. In El Paso and Juarez. However, again, that comes at the detriment to the pace. The pace, if this is not handled well, the pacing can be very very slow, and it is very slow. Um, I would even say at times it's kind of boring. Not not that the storylines are boring. It's just that the way in which they are told, I think, is a little boring. But again, this episode seems like it's going to gain some traction. It seems like we are finally developing some kind of arc for the season. We're getting some clarity when it comes to some characters. Annabeth Gish was not in this episode. Did I really miss her? Not really. No. Especially since her storyline seems completely disconnected from everyone else's, or at least that's the way it seems for the time being. So yeah, good episode. It actually accomplished something that the previous episode did not, which was make me actually excited for the next one. And that's about it for episode 2 of season 2 of The Bridge. And I'm glad this is doing well because there are some talented people, and for the most part, the show does make use of its talented cast. I've never actually seen the original Braun, although I may want to check that out.